Hi, my love, and welcome to Yes to Life podcast, a podcast about soulful living and sacred feminine embodiment. It is a podcast about following our dreams, open up to our full potential, and saying yes to life. It is also a podcast about remembering the sacredness of the female body and the feminine essence. My name is Helena. I'm a mother of 6 beautiful children and a sacred, sensual and feminine embodiment guide. I help women in all stages of their lives to love, adore and understand their female bodies, to celebrate their feminine essence and to awakening their inner goddess. I'm the founder of Blissful Feminine Flow and the creatrix of programs like Yoni Flowering, Womb Bliss, Sacred Bleeding, Blissful Mama, Pleasure Queen, and Sacred Feminine Body Love. I have always been very open and sensitive and have a feeling that more is possible. Beside my deep love and curiosity for the female body and the feminine essence, which I got mostly from my own pregnancy, birth and motherhood, I am also very fascinated about people who have dared to walk their own path and follow their dreams and are showing us that more is possible. I can see the power of us coming together and have these deep conversations about the things that we care about. I can also see the gift of listening to these deep conversations. That's why I started this podcast. If this touches something deep within you, please stay tuned and let's get started with today's episode. Today's episode is going to be the first episode in English in this podcast. And I am so happy to have this beautiful guest with me. Her name is Lauren Megan, a wonderful woman who have been in my field and in my life for a little bit more than a year now. She have inspired me so much and helped me to keep sharing my gifts, my voice and my message out into the world. In this conversation, we are going to talk about coming home back to the womb body and to trust our inner knowing and to have the bravery of speaking our truth and sharing our own unique gifts into the world. I am so happy to share this conversation with you. I am sorry for my voice and my video because I had a really bad internet connection, but Megan's beautiful voice and her clear and brilliant words of wisdom comes through so brightly. So let us dive into our conversation. So, another episode of Yes to Life podcast, and I'm so happy to welcome today's guest, Lauren Megan. She's a beautiful goddess that touches me over and over again with her amazing radiance, her beautiful voice, and words of wisdom. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you for having me. And yes, I was just sharing right before, I feel like we've been in each other's energy for quite some time. So it feels really special to be here and just to have this conversation and also to meet you, even though it's virtual. It just feels, it feels like such a deep connection.
Yes. And I also told you that this feels different because this feels like it's going to be 2 Jonas and wombs that are going to have these conversations.
Yeah.
So, as you said, you have been in my field. I have listened to you and you have saved my life many times the last year, because I have been in such a state of expansion, and also bringing my gifts and my voice into the world. And so many times I have reached that state of deep fear. Maybe I have shared something and then the fear had come up. And then you come in like an angel with some with your beautiful voice and those wisdom words, and help me to move on and to keep sharing what I'm here to share. So for those who don't know you, can you please share a little bit of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, that's such a funny question because I mean, it's so full spectrum. I think the first thing is, I'm a mother and I am a wife, and, I'm really devoted to the womb path and just to my own personal evolution, for myself, and also I think more than anything for my daughter. So I started my coaching business when I was 6 months pregnant with her. And I started off as a spirituality and manifestation coach. And there was a really big evolution with how I began and where I'm at now. And part of that evolution was really learning how to come back into my body and understanding my womb power as a woman and my feminine essence, and allowing that to really lead in business and within my life. So, the feminine tends to work in this spiral. So there's been so many seasons of expansion and contraction, and just, it's really been this deep evolution. So now I would say my work is really working with visionaries like yourself, coaches, healers, women that have these really sacred divine missions, and supporting them and birthing their companies out into the world, and supporting them in a way where they do feel safe to be seen and they do feel safe to be heard. And, they're really rooted in their truth and their authenticity, and, they're birthing companies that are so organic to them rather than having it be someone else's way. And I think a big part of it is, is our feminine expression. Like our unique way. And this has like really been channeling in our unique way is just so vastly different than someone else's, even if the medicine, and if the work is the same. And I feel like for women, like we have to find what that is, our way of doing business, our way of sharing, our way of speaking. So I guide women into their womb bodies, and I teach them how to soften and to feel safe and to, channel their wealth codes and their fullest expression. And, I think it's really my mission to have these revolutionary feminine leaders be wealthy, be in pleasure, just be, in their full power and potential, so that they can, lead this new earth.
Yes, that's so juicy what you just shared. And I can feel that yearning back home too. So many women that longing for something, longing to come home, and also longing to express something, and they don't really know what that is. And so many women feel disconnected. And your work with bringing women home is so, the way you do it, or the way I have seen and heard you do it, is just that's beyond words. You just feel that safety, and that you see feminine energy deep down in the root.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's the medicine right there, is that home isn't outside of us. And for so long on my path, like really prior to coming into the body, I was searching for home outside of myself. And I was searching for home in other people and coaches and experiences, and money and success and like all of these external ways. And there was still that longing. Like, even if I achieved, even if I did the thing, there was still, this deep longing for, that essence of home and that feeling of being nourished and safe and embodied. And home is within us. And for me, I believe home for women is the womb, and it is our first home. And, the womb within itself, we have our physical womb, but that's just a template of the cosmic womb, of the earth womb. So as women, it's like we're channeling in through our womb space all of these different energies. But for us to like really understand it, and for us to know it in a really intimate way, it requires us to spiral back into the womb and to learn her language again and to connect to her. And I see it so much too, my love, with like clients, that when they come back to the womb and they allow her to lead and they learn her language again, it's like there's no more searching, there's no more longing, there's no more like this, extracting to get something, because there's just this level of, there's this embodiment of safety and connection and pleasure within ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. And I have felt it so many times when judgments come up, judgments about me, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not beautiful enough. So it's so heavy and so painful to feel that judgments. Yeah. And the only way to come, or to, I don't know how I would say it, but the only way to heal that, or to change that has been going back to the feminine essence and to my body.
Yeah.
As you said, I have tried so many things, healing modalities and so on, and it hasn't helped me all the way. Yeah. But going back to our feminine essence, she don't judge.
No, and she, what's fascinating is like we can have those other healing modalities and those other ways of, like, for instance, I've been loving tapping and like EFT tapping these past few weeks. And, it's kind of a blend of somatic as well as mindset. But I feel like I can anchor it in, and I can anchor in these other modalities because I always come back to the truth of my womb. And it's like the womb guides my whole process, and just one thing that I witnessed from you, even through our conversations, and I'm sharing this because it speaks so beautifully to the power of the womb, is what I witnessed in you. And I reflected this back of, there's clarity in your next step, and there's clarity in your yes and your no. And, the womb, I believe, holds our intuition as women. I believe that, she is our highest source of power. And when we're connected to her, it's like, yeah, she might guide us into EFT tapping, or she might guide us into journaling and mindset work, but it's like a different frequency in which we're like stepping into those things, and I think that that's the power, because it's coming, and the womb is connected to our sacral. And I'll also say it's connected to our root, so it's connected to these two portals, the root being safety and security. So it's that holding, like feeling rooted and grounded. And then we have the energetics of the sacral. And that's abundance and prosperity and creation and life force and like that Shakti, like coming alive. So we're kind of dancing with like these two energies when we're really rooted within the womb space of I'm safe and secure within myself. And I also, and this is like the feminine embodiment, is like, I'm also in, a state of pleasure and receptivity and openness and creation. And I think for those of us that are serving in this way, like we're visionaries, we're creatrixes, we're growing companies, and our companies are built on an intention to serve the community, an intention to serve other women, an intention to heal generations worth of trauma so that there's a new way for our children. Like these, it requires us to just be rooted in the safety, and also to have like this big creatrix life force energy so that we can sustain it in a really beautiful way.
Yes. Chills when you talk, and it openly feel that you speak to something that's inside of me. I see it over and over again, because my relationship to my body was in the beginning, and it kept on for many years. But I had to a point where I had to change that if I was going to live, that I accept and to get to know my body.
Yeah.
And that was a pleasant journey, because there was many tears and much pain, but in the end I felt home. And I can see this fear in many women that wants to get to know the body, but it's so much fear in that journey. Is that something that you also see?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm a bridge in the coaching space, because I tend to attract two different types of women. I attract women that are very feminine and, they're intuitive and spiritual. So they're a bit more like open to this work, which is like they've been called on the priestess path. And, they very similar to you. It's like there's just like a knowing, and they've already started this body and womb reclamation. And then it's quite fascinating because I also call in women that are more in their heads. And I would say more in, that masculine way of being. And what I witness in these women is a curiosity, but there is a big fear, because, to feel, especially to feel pain, grief, anger, rage, sadness, which are all experiences of the feminine because of the suppression that we faced, the distortion, these false illusions, the abuse on our bodies in so many different ways. So the women that come into my space from that world, that's the number one thing that they say, is that I'm afraid to feel, because if I feel, what if I get stuck there? Like, what if there's no way out? And I think in my work, I do a really beautiful job. And I think the reason why I do a really beautiful job is because I know how to move through it myself. Like, I've walked through so many death portals. I've walked through so many portals of, initiations. And I allow myself to feel the fullness of this experience, and to allow, the feminine to really like live in me. So I love teaching these women that, their emotions and their experiences, it actually serves them in a really beautiful way. And it gets to be this guidepost, because so many of them are afraid to feel, because they fear that if they feel, then they'll lose success, or they'll lose, the wealth, or they'll lose, time. And for me, when we learn how to experience, the pain and the grief, it's like we expand our capacity to actually hold more of the pleasure and the goodness and the bliss of life, so the women in my world, like, they don't stay there. Yes, we have initiations. Yes, we walk through these really intense portals, but it's like, I think because my work is also so deeply rooted in understanding the nervous system, it's like everything just expands. So even in the contraction, just like with birth, it's like the contractions serve the expansion, and it's so fascinating. I shared this on my stories today, is like, I'm actually in like a really big initiation. I'm in a season of deep contraction. And yet I'm on this podcast and I'm serving clients and I'm still showing up. And it's not being out of integrity. It's just like, I know I allow myself to feel. I do the work behind the scenes to support my body and my womb and my yoni and my system as a whole. And I also am like so deeply rooted in my mission. So what I see on like the really feminine side, so here's where the bridge is like, some of those women, they'll stay in that space and, they'll be in these portals of initiation. And then it's like, they don't do anything for their mission, or they're hiding and they're not allowing them to be themselves to be seen. And it's like, you can be like, that's what creates like such a deep level of like vulnerability and connection, is like, I don't like, when we can just allow the wholeness of us to be seen, not being perfect, not being polished, not being like done with our spiritual journey. It is a spiral. We are feminine leaders and we are constantly spiraling in and out of different seasons of life and contraction and expansion and darkness and light. And like, that's the beauty of it, so and I had one of my mentors, she's the one that like really reflected this to me. She's like, you're the bridge between like these really masculine women that are afraid to do this work and the really feminine women that are afraid to be seen and, do the work, like get their missions out there, right? Because they're so in their fields. And I feel like, I don't know, it's such a gift because I can see what happens when like women just trust themselves to be in it and like be the wholeness of themselves. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I understand what you say. And me too. I am also in that, I don't remember the words you used, but I call that the expansion. And that is not, things comes up. And I shared this with a friend, was this morning, that I shared with her what had happened inside of me, the fear. And yesterday I've had a live in my group where I shared about how a week ago I was considering quitting everything and just deleting the page and just, oh no, I don't want to do this anymore. But I know that is not the truth. But that can come up. And then I know that I have to, my only way through it is to, okay, then I have to write to someone for collaboration, or I had to go live or do a course or something that just show myself that I'm not listening to this. In the same time that I, as you said, do the inner work and come back to my body and calming the nervous system and reconnecting to the yoni and the womb is also important, because otherwise maybe it feels like just don't listen to myself.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have someone like you that talk about that all the time, so we can keep on spiraling up.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you showed up anyway. And I also want to normalize that. Like, it's so normal to feel those things. What we're creating for so many of us, and I shared a post on this just a few weeks ago, is, we're growing businesses and sharing our mission, and we're allowing ourselves to be seen in a really unique way right now with social media and the internet. And it's so beautiful. I mean, I have friends all over the world. I know women right now all over the world in countries I've never been to. And, just like right now, like it's such a gift. And also we're clearing out ancestral, generational, and lifetimes worth of trauma within the womb space. And specifically like the throat, like the feminine throat has been locked up, caged up for so many centuries. So this feeling, and I want to normalize it because you're not the only one. I go through it. I work with so many clients that move through it. Like this feeling of just giving up, just quitting, just, throwing it all, burning it to the ground. It's so normal, but the way that we transcend that and we alchemize it in the body by creating safety for ourselves and reminding ourselves of our worth and our power and, that safety that lives within us. And then we show up. We do we take action and we go live. And, like you reached out to me last week, maybe in the midst of like feeling awful. And like, we expand our like edges of like, okay, I feel this contraction, but where am I being asked to like really stretch my capacity here and meet my own edge and like, say yes in a different way and still show up and do the thing. And like, that's this journey over and over and over again, Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And I think it's different areas of life that we are comfortable to stretch, because I am leading women back to their bodies too, and to explore pleasure and self-love and
I think what I heard was pleasure and like our expanding our edges for pleasure. Is that what you were talking about?
yes.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah,
Yes.
I think that I'm going to riff on this for a moment. Were you in my energy when my Instagram handle was the Pleasure Priestess?
Yes, I was
Yeah.
going there. I was going to say, when I met you, you were the pleasure priestess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yes.
shifted that. But the reason why I stepped into that like name of the Pleasure Priestess is because that was like such a reclamation for me, was learning my body again. And I actually went on this whole journey when my partner and I, we weren't married yet, and we took a year apart. So I was in like a really big grief portal of leaving my partner of 10 years, the father of my daughter. And he said something to me that like really stuck, is he said, I know your body better than you know your body. And he didn't say it in like this spiteful way. I think the masculine has a really beautiful gift of like being clear and straightforward. And so it was kind of like this hit of like, it's actually true. I don't know my body and I don't know my yoni and I don't know myself in the way that I probably should as a woman. And up until that point, I didn't do any hands-on yoni work. I had never really like taken the time to know her. So I spent a whole year taking the time to know my breasts, to know my body, to just be in these like really slow somatic practices again, not with the intention of orgasm. And like that was the biggest shift for me. Like it was always, if I was to touch myself or to explore my body, there was always an intention of an outcome. And what's so fascinating is because I allowed myself to be in these spaces, with the pain that was present in my yoni because of sexual trauma and abuse, and just simply saying yes when I really wanted to say no, and ignoring her and, violating her in all of these different ways. Like there was an expansion that happened because I was willing to sit in those spaces and to de-armor in a really slow, somatic way, with breath, with gentle touch, without like this need to extract. And what's so fascinating is that sensation came back. So in the spaces where I felt numb or disconnected, sensation came back, and pleasure, like my pleasure just like heightened. And when my partner and I got back together, that was the biggest thing that both of us noticed, is I didn't clench up. I didn't tighten. I didn't like fight the experience or try to perform. It was just very raw and real. And it was like riding those waves of pleasure and orgasm and bliss and ecstasy. And I witnessed it too in my business. I witnessed it too in all of these other areas of my life, and wealth, and serving clients, and the women that I was calling into my field, just like in all of these different, like really beautiful ways. But I had to be in that experience of being with the discomfort and moving through, just alchemizing that discomfort and allowing the sensations to come alive. And I work with a lot of women that have had similar experiences to mine, and feeling numb, going too fast, too hard, just like, using your body just to, again, either outsource or extract, or all of these ways. It's like we abandon ourselves. Anytime we say yes when we want to say no, or we don't trust her and, her pulsation and her turn on, like we're abandoning ourselves in some way. So it's like the pleasure's always there. I think for a lot of us, because of our experiences, and just how society like has conditioned women, and has, really like essentially demonized women's bodies, told us that it's bad, told us that it needs to look a certain way, like all of these things. I mean, it's so deeply placed on the bodies of women. And I think that it's a responsibility for us as women to learn our bodies again. Like that is the biggest responsibility. And having a daughter, it was just like, you have a daughter as well, right? Yeah. So, it's
I have
like
5 daughters.
oh my God, my love.
Wow. Yes.
Wow. Wow. So, it's like we have a responsibility as mothers to heal this and to reclaim what our right is, our right to be in body, our right to explore the body, our right to claim what is ours. Like that is our responsibility for our daughters. And I think that that's this wave right now that we're seeing of like the feminine really rising. And it's not feminism as we see it, like here in the States. Feminism is so distorted of like women should be men. It's like, no, the feminine has a beautiful essence and a beautiful flavor. And that's what is being asked to be cultivated right now. Her softness, her surrender, like her power, not through force, but just through presence and connection,
Yes. Yes. You're putting it so like the beautiful music when you speak. Oh, I love it. Yes. And going back to the yoni, it's I don't know if you had read the book Vagina with Naomi Wolf.
No, I haven't.
It's a Bible. When she talk about the brain vagina connection, and how
wow.
Yes, and how our vagina or yoni impacts our way of looking at ourselves and to the world.
Yeah.
And I have seen this over and over again, how when my yoni is alive and relaxed and open and safe, I feel open, safe, and relaxed in life.
Yeah.
And if she is tensed and stressed out and saying no to anything in life, I start to see the world as with fear and start to judge myself. So it's so interesting to read about how, because that's just something that I experience in my own life and in the women I work with, but I didn't know why. But in that book, she explains it very beautifully.
Yeah. I'll have to read it because it's so true. The yoni is such a mirror. Yeah.
And when we start to reconnect to her, that's also a way of learning to know our intimate self.
Yeah.
And to see ourselves deeply. And there's so many things that, because she's remembering everything we have experienced. But as you say, we can help her to heal and to let go of that trauma. Because for 2 weeks ago, I had a masterclass, a 3-day masterclass in my group, Swedish group, that called Awakening the Sleeping Beauty. That was about awakening. And it was after that because I shared so much and we gave so much love to the yoni, and after that fear came up inside of me, that I had that feeling of being too much. So I can see that program, or that we can do that. We open up and we say yes, and then how long does it take to something to come and take it away from us? So it's a continuous journey to keep expanding, to keep open up to ourselves too.
Yeah, I love this reflection, and I love hearing just about your work and your level of embodiment and devotion to this. It's just so sweet connecting to women that are on this path and doing the work. It really, this priestess path is so powerful. And there is that, it's like the rose opens and then we're like waiting for it to contract again, or for it to, go back, or for it to die. And I think that this is like where the yoni work is so important, is because we can somatically teach the body to stay in that power space and to stay in the bigness and to stay in, I'm meant to teach this. I'm meant to guide women into the body. I'm meant to hold this for other women. And that doesn't mean that you won't have those moments or those thoughts of, because I've had it too, of like, was that too much? Should I have shared that? I'm in the midst of running Cosmic Rose, which is, a really big priestess temple, 9-month initiation. And for the first few temples, I felt so nervous going into every single call. And now, I know the women, and I've also sat with them in person in ceremony and, in a retreat. So it's really beautiful. Like, they're so receptive to the work, but it's really fascinating because women have left the container because it's too much. And as a facilitator and as a guide, I've had to hold myself in that of, it's not that I'm too much. I'm not too much as a facilitator and as a teacher and as a priestess. It's too much for them. Wherever they're at on their journey, it's too much for them to hold. But if I were to dim my light, or let's say restructure or change this vision that I'm holding for the mission that I have with Cosmic Rose, because I just, see it as like this global mission. Like when I sit with that energy, I see hundreds of women coming into this space and touching their yonis and reclaiming, the essence of Mary Magdalene and Isis and just this rose lineage. And, but I can't dim my light. So it's been so fascinating. It's so interesting how it mirrors back to you of like, wow, it's too much for her, but that doesn't mean that I'm too much. It means nothing about me, because I know that this is what I'm meant to create and this is how I'm meant to serve. And it's also really powerful to see the women that stay, because most of the women have stayed, right? And the shifts, because, and this is how I see feminine leadership is like, we go on this journey and we embody in such a beautiful way, and we devote ourselves to this work, and we rise as leaders so that we can mirror that back to other women. And in mirroring that back, it activates it with them. And some people will be triggered by that. And I've had women message me and say, you're so triggering. They've unfollowed me. They've come back into my energy. And I just hold it. I've had to learn to like hold my power. And what's beautiful is the women that stay, and like yourself, where you just feel activated in the most beautiful way. And it reminds you, like, keep going. This is the path that you were called on. Like, do not waver, So I get it. I get the feeling of like, am I too much? And I think that that's, again, like where we expand, we meet our edges of like, no, it's not too much. I've sat in ceremony and I've touched women's yonis hands-on in person and have literally experienced them. I've held their yonis as they've rebirthed themselves out into the world. I've held women in some of the most like beautiful spaces. And it's because I can hold that for myself. And I refuse to allow any illusion of not enoughness, of unworthiness to come in and like, waver, no matter how hard it gets, no matter, what I have to walk through. Like, I refuse,
Oh, I'm so grateful that you think that way, because I have woke up in the middle of the night had that feeling that maybe I was too much yesterday in that live. And then I pick up the phone and open up Instagram, and there you are. speaking about that has nothing to do with me. And I haven't even had that experience that someone had said something to me, but I think as a survivor of abuse, I also try to look at or feel, is this too much, all the time? And sometimes many women don't know what we're talking about because they haven't felt themselves. So maybe they don't always think it's too much, but they don't understand. And then you look in their eyes and you see, oh, they don't understand. Maybe I try to keep it on their level, but that doesn't work.
And it doesn't serve them, it doesn't serve women. It's like, we have to allow the women that are meant to be in our space and in our energy, whether they work with us or, they collaborate with us, like whatever that co-creative relationship is like, our role is to allow them to like really rise to their potential. And I mean, I've had women that they just have conversations with me and they're just so expanded and like they, birth things, and it's so beautiful. And then I have clients that have worked with me for a year and they birth, and they're completely different women. And what's so interesting is it's just like, if I would have dimmed my light, if I would have gotten small, if I wouldn't have continued to show up, then, or if I would have like muted myself and just not shared my truth, then, then it's just like that ripple of impact. It would have completely stopped. So I think we're at this time. And I think that this is like the new earth energy, is like we are being asked to like really rise and to hold our power as women. And if people think it's too much, if it's too much for them, then bless and release it. If your power triggers another woman, then bless and release, and bless them with love, and pray that they evolve, and they maybe look at this shadow of what's happening. But it's also not my responsibility. Like, I'm not in the business of mothering women. And I mother my daughter. That's the only human I mother. I don't mother my husband. I mother my dog and my daughter, because they're dependent on me for survival. But clients and women in my community and my space, I'm not here to mother you. That's exhausting, and that takes me out of my power. So I'm going to stay in my power. I'm going to stay and, my queen, I talk so much about like that queen energy, and I can support you. I can be a guide. I can midwife you. I can be an activator for you, but you will not take my power from me, because I've experienced abuse. And because I've had to heal so much stuff to step into this space. And I've had to really support my little girl to feel safe, and that took years of work. And that's a continuation of years of work, because of the trauma that has happened just in this life, and it's so interesting, because like, I've shared this a little bit like on my podcast, of just like, I've been healing so much recently, these past few months, like the abuse of being raised by a narcissistic father, and just like what that does, that hypervigilance, and just the low self-worth and the lack of confidence. And, I when I was in Sedona with the retreat for Cosmic Rose, I went to a healer, and she did like this womb work and this shamanic like energy work. And she was just like, you are being asked to really reclaim your power for the women that you're meant to work with. She's like, that is your medicine, to reclaim your womb power. And I'm just like, okay, I'll walk through the fire so that I can activate that with another, for other women. And I think that that's the thing, is like, you can either stay stuck in your trauma and see yourself as a victim, or you can see your trauma, do the work to heal it so that you feel safe again, so that you feel held again. But using those experiences to like rise. I mean, I work with so many women now that have such intense trauma, and like, it's so, and are in free states, or in fight or flight. And it's like, they come back into neutral, and they center themselves back into the womb. And it's just, they're so potent, but it's like, I have to go first. Like, I have to do the work first, Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that's so juicy. Can I ask you, can we go into a little thing about birth?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay?
Yes. I love
Because
birth.
I know that I have birthed 6 children.
Wow.
So 1 boy and 5 girls. And the last girl I birthed at home. And that was, every time I have went through a pregnancy and birth, that had taken me deeper into my female body's wisdom and the feminine essence and the great mother, and allowed me to find a deeper connection to that part of me.
Yeah.
And I know that your birthing experience is guiding you so much in your business too, and in life.
Yeah.
I can guess. I'd like to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my birth, I was very fortunate. I had a woman that I nannied for when I was pregnant in Denver, who really spoke to me that I had wisdom, and, my body was capable of birthing a baby out of hospital. And I had a lot of people telling me that I couldn't, up until like the week of giving birth, of people saying I couldn't, I couldn't move past the pain threshold, or, whatever it was. Like there was so many tests of like, you can't do this. And I did. I birthed my daughter out of hospital, completely unmedicated, dancing between worlds. What was really interesting is I stalled out at 9 centimeters, and I had a cervical lip, and my daughter essentially turned on me. So she went sunny side up, which increased, back labor tremendously. I mean, my husband told me that at one point it looked like the baby was like bulging out of my lower spine, and it was so intense. And I had this moment. I mean, I was already over 24 hours of labor, and I was about 9 hours into like the really intense back labor. And I had gotten to this point where I was like, there's no way, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. It's too much. And I was just like, just take me to the hospital, like cut her out, just do whatever you need to do. My midwife came up to me, and she just looked me in the eyes. She's like, you're fighting your baby. You're fighting your baby coming out, and you just have to surrender. And up until that point, I stopped using God. And I had only referred to like this higher source of energy as the universe. And the reason for that was because I was raised Catholic. So there was a lot of, deconstructing, and just, a little bit of like that, like masculine trauma of, God's this thing in the sky that's going to condemn you for your sins and all of the things. And it was very like fear-based, but there was like, I just had like this moment of leaning back into the water, because I was in the tub, and I leaned back in the water, and my contractions completely stopped for I don't know how long. And I just felt the presence and saw Jesus and Mother Mary, and I felt the energy of God. And it was then that I was ready to, birth my daughter out into the world. And those lessons of birth have guided me over and over again in business. Surrender, trusting myself above other people's opinions, telling me that I can't do this, that I can't create a thriving business. Like all of these things have just like, I've infused them over and over again as like this anchor of, really being in service and in my mission, and trusting and surrendering and allowing, the aligned clients to find me, and the money to come in, and the opportunities, and like all of these things. So for me, I feel like when women come to me for support with their business, I feel like instead of being like a business coach, I'm more of a midwife, because I don't necessarily tell women how to run their companies or the strategy that they should, do within a launch. It's really just being a midwife, like being that woman when you feel the contraction so much and you're in it, just being that woman to be like, you're number one, you're doing it, like you're in it, you got it, just surrender, trust, and obviously there's work. I still had to push her out. I still, had to do the work to guide my baby out of the cervical canal and all of it. But it was like that moment of surrender just opened me up to be able to birth her into the world. So yeah, that's how I like infuse business with birth. And I just think there's such a synergy for it, and you've birthed 6 babies. So, like to birth a baby out into the world requires deep surrender and trust within your body. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a journey. And when you because every birth is unique. Yeah. But if you know that ebbs and flows and that feeling, that intensity, then you start to relax into it. So if someone asked me today, what's the most pleasure experience you have had? I must say that is the birth.
Yeah.
So maybe if we give time and starts to listen, we can turn pain into something else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also.
Yeah.
And beside sexual abuse in the journey, it is most women have. And these two things also blocks our throat. So if we start to heal everything together in a dance, because it's affecting everything in life, and in this, that's so beautiful. And I have listened to that, not the whole story, but parts of it, and I start to cry. Not now because I'm on camera, but when I listen to it, it's so beautiful, and I could feel that the energy and the connection to that divine feminine essence and power.
Yeah. And it was also the holding, of, I think that Yeshua, Jesus, like that God, Christ energy came in as well to really have that masculine support and presence to usher her in, so I do think it's a synergy. I think we're healing as much as we're healing the divine feminine, like we're healing the divine masculine, and, healing a relationship that he gets to be there to protect us and have presence and, create safety and security for us. So I I was just telling my husband, I was like, I don't think you spoke much at my birth. He's like, I didn't say a word. I was just there, like he was just there supporting. And I had my midwife and birth assistant and my doula there, and they were the women. And this is why I do think womb work is feminine work. It's women's work, because, and I think it's so important for us to have women to walk this path with, as, because we know the experience, and we can just like be this guide and this remembrance of like, you got it, babe. Like you got it, womb to womb, heart to heart, eye to eye. It's just like, you're here, so yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. I absolutely agree. I think we are going to end this episode, but I think I want to invite you to more podcasts.
Yeah.
So we can speak about more things. This was just the beginning and the start.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time and being here. I'm so grateful. And I didn't think you should say yes. I just asked you in one of those moments where I felt that I had an urge to shy away and to hide. And then I thought, no, I'm going to reach out to Lauren and ask her. Yes, take a big jump to the other side instead.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored. It felt like such an edge for you. And yeah, it was an absolute yes. The moment I received your message, it was just a yes.
Yes, so honored. But for people who want to know more about you and come in contact with you.
Yeah. So
Did you share?
I'm most active on Instagram. So you can just find me at I am Lauren Megan. And yeah, I do a lot of free content. So I have a podcast, the Womb Wealth and Wellness podcast, and I do a lot of lives and just ways for women to receive. And you can always go to my website, www.laurenmegan.com, and you can find ways to work with me. I have a mastermind and a mystery school. And yeah, so just send me a DM and we can chat.
So much juiciness, and you want to have her voice in your life.
Yeah. Thank you, my
So
love.
go and yes, I will put the links everywhere where this podcast are going to be too. So thank you, Lauren, for today.
Thank you, babe. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening. If this was touching you, please feel free to share. And to find out more, check out the links below.